on the eastern side of Nepal, because that's where Lumbini is, like southeast.
I bet that was a wonderful trip.
It was a great trip. It was the kind of thing that turns your life around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So welcome, Tom. How are you?
Lance, how are you?
Good, good. I see Pema is here. Hi, Pema.
Hi, Lance.
Good to see you. And I don't know who SCABA is, but you're welcome to be here.
Hi, Lance. This is Dara from last week. I have a couple of accounts. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm sorry. What is your name again?
Hey. This is Zara. I was here last week for the first time from South Carolina, from Charleston.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Good to see you again.
Hi, y'all. Good to see you too. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Hi, Zara.
Hi, everyone. I hope y'all are being safe and healthy.
Oh, thank you. You too.
All right, very good.
Vera, is it Vera with a V?
With a Z.
Yeah, it's actually Persian. It's Iranian. It's Zahra. But the American pronunciation, I just do like Sarah with the Z versus the actual authentic pronunciation. But it's Persian.
Great.
Well, it's a lovely name.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, if everybody has their prayer book or a reasonable facsimile thereof, we can begin with doing our prayers, so we can start with the altruistic motivation. So we'll recite this twice in English and once in Tibetan today. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe pa du jo pa je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam ka dam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zok pe zhang ju brin po she to pa ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Peshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Transcends awa dangur parje pe pal dan lama dampa namla kapsu chio. Yidam kil gorgi la sok namla kapsu chio. Sangye chom dende namla kapsu chio. Dampe cho namla kapsu chio. Pape ge dun namla kapsu chio. Pawo kadro cho kyong song me song yeshe gi chang dang den pa namla kapsu chio. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shangju Ningpo Chiki Ba Sangye Namla Kapsu Chi Chodang Shangshu Sampa Yi Soklang Deshin Kapsu Chi Jitar Nongi Deshegi Shangshu Tugni Ke Padang Shangshu Sampe La Pala De Dag Rimshin Ne Pata De Shin Drola Pandandu Shangshu Samni Ki Shing De Shin Du Ni La Pala Rimpa Shindu La Pa Ji O. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Manam kadam yam pe sam chen tam she de wa dang de we ger dang dem pa chi. Excuse me, I made a mistake. Sangye cho dang so ki cho nam la shang shu ba du dag ni kap su chi. Dagi jin so ki pe so nam gi. Jola Panshir Sangye Ju Pa Sho. In the Buddha, the Dharma, may all mother sentient beings, especially all boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sam chen tam she de wa dang de we ger dang dem pa jur chi. Dog now dang de now gi gu dang dra wa jur chi. Dog now me pe de wa dang mi dra wa jur chi. Nay ring jag dang ni dang dra wei tang nam la me pa jur chi. And then we'll do one more. We'll do page 8 and page 9. 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. So we'll recite first in English one time, and then we'll recite the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. So we're going to continue with the chapter 7 in the stages of meditation, how to meditate on the development stage of skillful means, which is the generation stage of deity yoga, developing the generation stage, understanding the meaning of the generation stage of deity yoga. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions or comments from last week? Anything that you've been thinking about that you want to talk about before we start here?
No, not for me.
Okay, all right. Well, then I suppose that everybody has the outline. I hope you do. If not, take notes. And it's right from the book. So if you have the book and you read the book, then you're getting, what this outline came from. So basically what we're trying to do is to develop our understanding of the practice of deity yoga, of becoming a Buddha, what it is to become a Buddha. This is the wisdom tradition. This is the wisdom path. So we have the Hinayana, which is discipline. Then we have Mahayana, which is the emptiness and the Bodhisattva, the two truths, the devotion. And then we have the wisdom tradition, which is the Vajrayana, which is the Tibetan Buddhism. And the Tantrayana is another name for it. And another name for it is the Mantrayana. So this is where we are developing, recognizing ourselves as a Buddha. And we all have this within us. We have this Buddha within us, this Buddha nature within us. And it's a matter of being able to remove the blockages and allow this Buddha nature to rise up so that it's what is shining and not being blocked up by all our confusions and emotions and so on like that. So one of the key elements to help us to focus on what we're trying to do is we're trying to become a proper vessel to be a Buddha, to be a proper vessel to allow this true nature to come up. So this proper vessel is like a jar or a glass or a bottle or a pot or something like that. So the analogy here, the metaphor for this, is to think of this pot in three different ways. First, if you take that pot, if you take that jar, and you turn it upside down so that the bottom is up, and you are trying to take water or some liquid and try to pour it in there, it's just going to splash everywhere. It's not going to go inside the jar. So the same is with us. If we are resistant to any of the Dharma teachings, if we're not going to pay attention, if we're not going to practice and study, it's like taking the Dharma and just pouring it over your heads, and it's not going to do anything. It's not to go into your body. It's not going to go into your mind. It's not going to go into your life in the same way. So that's illustration number one. Illustration number two is that you have your jar or your pot, and it's turned upright, but there's a lot of holes in the jar, in the pot. And as you pour in the liquid, it just runs right out like a sieve. It doesn't hold any water. So in the same way, if we are here listening or being part of these teachings, but we're not paying attention, we're not listening to them, we're not letting it sink in, it's just running right out, is like the Dharma just running right out of us. It's just going in one ear and out the other. So we want to safeguard against that. So the third illustration of being a proper vessel is that you have your pot, you have your jar, and it is completely watertight. There's no problem of anything flowing out of it. However, you have poison inside of it. And whatever you pour inside, whatever liquid you pour inside, it contaminates that liquid. And if you drink that liquid, you become poisoned. Well, in the same way, the analogy is that if you have all these preconceived ideas within yourself, all these habitual tendencies, all these massive confusions and emotion, and you haven't done anything to neutralize them, to be able to use the Dharma to be able to do them, it's like having poison inside your body. And no matter what Dharma comes into you, it just gets contaminated. It gets infected with that poison, and it's rendered useless to you. So the analogy is that we're trying to be a proper vessel to be able to become the embodiment and the practice, to do the practices and the study and the comprehension and meditations of the Dharma teachings. So we want to be wary of if we're not paying attention, if we're lazy. We want to pay attention if it's just going in one ear and out the other. And we want to pay attention if we're not dealing with our doubts and our emotions or our confusions and not speaking up and trying to vent those to find out what the root issues are and be able to overcome them. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly natural to have doubts. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly natural to have confusions and to have emotions. But what we need to do is to be able to say, okay, I've got these issues. Please, how can I help myself to overcome these? That's what's important. So we've been talking about ripening. You know that we're coming to a time of our life. You know, when we're ripening, we're ready for these trainings. We're ready for these meditations, and we find that we have a target. Our target is our Buddha nature, liberation, enlightenment. That we realize that there is a ground on which we are standing, on which we are sitting, a basis from where we are coming, and that we have this goal, this target that we want to get to, and that there is this pathway that is the Dharma that allows us to go from where we are here to our goal of liberation, of enlightenment, that pathway. And that's very, very important to recognize and to embark on that. So we talked about that there are inner outer, inner, and secret displays of our nature, of our humanness, of our human nature, and to recognize those. And we go through the stages of being a beginner. Everybody has to start someplace. We've all been beginners. We're starting someplace. We're learning a bunch of things. It's all coming together. So the first year anyway, you know, it's like, oh my goodness, all this stuff is coming in. How do I organize it? How do I process it? But, you know, there's ways to do that. And we can talk about that if you need to. But everything's coming in. So then after some time, then you become a practitioner. Then you're actually using the practices and you're recognizing the practices. You're seeing the benefits of the practices and you're developing your familiarity with them, and you're recognizing the different elements within the practices and so on, like the seven branches, the 7-branch prayer we recite, the different parts of each practice and so on. So we begin to recognize that as a practitioner. And then we spend a lot of time being a practitioner. But then we start having, you know, these glimpses. We start having some results. We start having some experiences of coming into union, of coming together, to becoming inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of our Buddha nature, our human nature meeting our Buddha nature. And we call this the union. And this is becoming a yogi or a yogini. A yogi is a man, a yogini is a woman. So coming into union with that we have within ourselves and recognizing that means that we've had some moments where we have removed those blockages heart center, and we've had these shards of light, we've had these glimpses of this true nature coming through, and we are in union with that. We're working to increase that union, to stabilize that union. And then after that, then we become a siddha. A siddha is an accomplished one who now has transcended the meditation and is in a meditation all the time. They take the meditation with them wherever they go. And they are always in union. They are always in meditation, even though they're going to work and doing all the things that they normally do with their families and their friends and so on. They still are stable in their inseparability with the indestructible wisdom that is in our heart center, that is our Buddha nature. So this is a siddha. And then we become a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a wholly enlightened being. A bodhisattva. So there's 10 levels of being a bodhisattva. You know, we loosely say that, oh, you know, so-and-so is behaving like a bodhisattva, he's doing such good deeds and so on. But bodhisattva really is a very, very precise nomenclature for levels of perfection. And there are these 10 levels of perfection that are called the bhumis. And these bhumis come out of the paramitas, the 10 perfections. So we learn what they are, we practice what they are, and so on. And then when we become inseparable with them, when we become perfectly stable with them, then we embark on that path now of being a bodhisattva. And so that is great accomplishment, great stability. And so we're all working for that. And then finally, as a bodhisattva, then we have the ability to let it all go and become a Buddha and just become the perfect embodiment of all this wisdom, all this skillful means, all this ability and so on that is conceptlessness, not non-conceptual, non-conceptual. And this is what we're trying to recognize now. So through the deity yoga, this is how we recognize that we're looking now a little bit past what the bodhisattva is. we're approaching this as if we are a bodhisattva, and we're beginning to recognize what these qualities, what these activities are of the Buddha nature, so that we can use those, and over again we can purify those remaining impurities that we have within ourselves, those remaining doubts, those remaining imperfections, contaminations, and so on, to be able to pacify them, to be able to overcome them, to be able to cut them off. So we talk about the cities. The cities are the accomplishments as we begin to do that. So a lot of what we're learning is this vocabulary. And to be able to start thinking in terms of this vocabulary is very important. That's what a large part of Buddhism 101 is about, is learning the vocabulary. From learning the vocabulary, you begin to learn, those human concepts that we need to be able to do, to be able to keep ourselves, make ourselves, and keep ourselves as a proper vessel, so that we can then become transcendent and be able to leave all that, to liberate ourselves from all of that. So we left last week on page 4 of this text that I had put together, or this outline that I had put together. So, so let me just read a little bit here. It says, therefore, I'm on the bottom of page 3. It says, therefore, practicing in the manner of resting the mind naturally in pure awareness, which is the Buddha nature, which has always been this effortless, unmodified wisdom, is the ultimate profound Dharma. Being able to be in this pure awareness, this pure nature. We have it within us. And it's a matter of being able to allow it to come up and be spontaneously present.
Lance, can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay. Gary, I apologize for interrupting. I've had a heck of a time getting in, and I was talking to you and you weren't talking back, so I finally succeeded.
Okay, good. All right.
Sorry for interrupting.
That's all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
All right, good. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Okay.
Okay. So we're trying to recognize this pure awareness, and we can have glimpses of that pure awareness in our meditations. We can have a glimpse of it. We can have a glimpse of it while we're doing everyday mundane things, where all of a sudden, something comes together, and there's something like an epiphany or something, and some obscure thought or some very difficult thought all of a sudden comes together, and you recognize something, you see something. So it can happen in many different ways. And so we recognize this pure awareness. So by receiving this kind of instruction that we're embarked on now, the yogin or yogini practices in league together with the meditative experiences and reaches the understandings, these understandings. We begin to bring these together. First, we have to have some experience with it. So we want to have meditative experience after we've kind of formulated what the concept is, what the intellectual concept is, and then we want to have a relationship with that. So this comes from the Vipassana incense that the Vipassana meditation that we talked about a few weeks ago, the insights. So taking in this knowledge, taking in this awareness, and being able to allow it to come up, to percolate up with these insights. So what we're trying to do is to recognize that the deity has always been with us, that it's always been there. We are the deity, it's just all blocked up. So when I say the deity, I mean the Buddha. And the Buddha has many, many different names, many different body types and so on like that, that are all kind of conceptual, but they're all there to help us to recognize what these qualities are. So, so the instruction is to help us to learn what that is and to develop this innate accomplishment to be able to recognize that we've already got it within us. Now it's to be able to familiarize ourselves by removing all the blockages and so on. And that the phenomena that surrounds all this, the stuff that we are so easily distracted by and confused by, this phenomenal nature, is all empty. Is all emptiness. It's all fabricated. It's all just mental fabrications that we see all these appearances and we say that all this is real. And we spend all our time just dealing with this false reality. And thereby we interrupt our trying to get to our true nature, our Buddha nature. So we need to be able to focus beyond the phenomenal nature. So this instruction helps us to recognize that and do that. So again, this is the innate accomplishment. This is the great innate accomplishment to be able to do that, to recognize the goal, to recognize that which is preventing us from getting to the goal. Those two things are part of the accomplishment. And then all is spontaneous reflection of mind and primordial knowing awareness. So what this statement means, I'm on page 4 here in the first paragraph there, the spontaneous reflection of mind, that all this phenomenal nature is a reflection of our fabricated mind. So we talk about having mirror-like wisdom is being able to recognize those reflections like in a mirror and see that it's all just fabricated. Somebody's got a microphone on, if they can turn it off, please. The other part of this is the primordial knowing awareness, that we have this primordial. It's so pure, it's unborn, that we have within ourselves, that is this pure nature, this pure Buddha nature, that is this knowing awareness. Now this knowing is not a knowing, not a vicarious intellectual knowing. It is a gnosis. You're familiar with the Greek word called gnosis. And this gnosis is having the experience of, knowing it from being that. And once you have that experience, it can never, ever be taken away from you. So one experience might be being a mother, having to give birth to a child, carrying a child, and so on like that, is something that a man can only think that they might understand. But a woman who has had a child certainly understands what that is. And she can tell you, she knows that there is a difference between a mother and a man who's not had that ability to be able to have a child. So that's like a gnosis, that the actual experience of doing it and so on. So we're talking about this now in terms of a meditative experience, of a transcendent experience. So it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, that we're all capable of recognizing this primordial wisdom awareness that is within ourselves. And we have to be able to pierce through, cut through the emotions, cut through the things that hold us back, cut through the confusions and so on. And then we have these glimpses of that pure nature. So this is done in the meditative mind, but sometimes, like I said, it can happen what seems to be out of meditation. But for us to be able to stabilize it, we need to bring it back onto the path and into our meditation. And that's how we stabilize it. So this primordial knowing is none other than the nature of mind. This primordial knowing is the nature of the mind. So the mind has all these things that it's occupying its time with, but the nature of the mind is to be just completely open and completely pure and completely non-judgmental, non-discriminating, not to be focused on anything, and just to be relaxed and just to be peaceful. That's the nature of the mind. So this primordial knowing is that, and then knowing the things that interrupt us. But it's the mind, it's the field in which all this is happening. And it just wants to be pure and simple and clear. So right from this very moment, for each and every one of us, the true nature of our minds is this. So there's three elements here. So we're going to pick this apart a little bit. So first is the equanimity wisdom. The equanimity wisdom. Equanimity means balance, means sameness. And wisdom, of course, is the realization of that. So coming to terms with this notion that we're all the same. So whether we're human beings or we're sentient beings or whether we're part of phenomenal nature, we're all compounded in the same way. We all come from the same material. We all come from the same matter. We have all the same energy that is surrounding us, that we are all part of, and that the matter and the energy are constantly in a state of flux between each other. So whether we're a table or whether we're a human being, that dynamic is always happening. And this is the equanimity awareness. So this is part of the primordial knowing. The next one is the unceasing present awareness. This spontaneous presence is being in that awareness, being in that present awareness, but yet not thinking about it, not being obsessed about it in any way, not having to process it. We are it. We are just it. We are the embodiment of that. And we don't need to process it. If something happens, if something comes into us, something interrupts us, well, then maybe we have to shift, and now we got to pay attention to something, and this other dynamic begins to happen. This other actualization of activities goes into play and so on. But as soon as that is satisfied, then we can go back to our resting period, to just that point of spontaneous presence. Unceasing present awareness. And then the third thing is the emptiness luminosity. And this is beyond any conceptual constructs. So it's really difficult to explain this. The closest thing we can talk about is one word. Well, there's a couple different words. One word is clarity. That there is this clarity of being. There's this clarity of the mind. There's this clarity of understanding, but beyond the conceptual, in a non-conceptual way. Another way of explaining this is pure love. That one of the sensations, if you will, is bliss. Is not, just being in that suspended animation of living, and just kind of like floating, and not being having to pay attention to anything, So for our ordinary human mind, like we're sitting here right now and we're looking at each other and talking to each other, it doesn't really get that point, It's more like the cyberspace that's between us all. There's all this invisible stuff between us. It's more like that. That stuff is just there. And we're just kind of activating through it. Another example would be like the sun. The sun is this ball of this nuclear reaction, we know, and it's just burning, 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 burning. And it's creating all this light, and all this heat. But the sun is totally unaware of itself. But meanwhile, it is sustaining all this life, all this solar system in so many different profound ways that we can, just barely understand and can't imagine all of what it is. So this clarity is like that is like that sun that is just illuminating, that is just creating all this ability, all this functionality for this phenomenal nature to take place. But if that phenomenal nature wasn't there to take place, the sun would still be shining. This wisdom awareness would still be there. You know, so we say that it's permanent, you know, but for lack of a better word, but it's beyond being permanent. There's no word for it. There's no word to describe this love. There's no word to describe this clarity that really totally describes it without conditioning it in some way. So now to explain it a little bit differently, we talk about it in these three avenues of liberation. How do we get to recognize this equanimity wisdom, this unceasing present awareness, and this emptiness luminosity through these three avenues of liberation? So this is what we are meditating for, is this liberation. So the first avenue is emptiness, the awareness of emptiness, the realization of emptiness. And it's not something newly created, but rather it's innately present, unconditioned by nature, the essence of emptiness. To recognize that all of this is all compounded nature. It's empty of its own inherent being. Everything is compounded of something else. And we explain things, we think of things in terms of other things. And this is part of the human nature. This is part of the human mind, the way it works. So being able to recognize that and then transcend that is what the liberation, that's what we're trying to do, is to liberate ourselves from the notion of what emptiness is in the first place. So the second avenue is the nature of this emptiness is free from all labels and cannot be described as fit into our conceptual mind as an object of understanding. This is the second avenue of liberation, the avenue of being beyond characteristics by way that we can characterize it or pinpoint it. So we have this natural tendency to want to say, well, what is it? You know, how can I explain this to myself? How can I explain it to somebody else? But it's all beyond that. So being able to abide in that, to be able to abide in that liberation is the present awareness. With no labels. So that's why when you may have heard, you know, when we start meditating, we close our eyes to help us to focus on our practice and so on, and to avoid, you know, interruptions, to avoid, you know, distractions and so on like that. But after a time, we can be a yogi, we can be a siddha, and now we can open our eyes, but we're not seeing anything. You know, there's stuff out there, but we're not, you know, it's not registering. You know, we're not paying attention to it. You know, and so this is that awareness. This is the liberation, the avenue of liberation beyond characteristics. You may hear things, but it's not registering. You may smell things, but it's not registering. You may feel things, but it's not registering. You may taste things, but it's not registering. You know, this is, maybe you've all heard about the tummo, you know, in the 6 yogas of Naropa. You know, there's these 6 practices, and everybody likes to fixate on the tummo. Oh, I want to do the tummo. This is going to be the great badge of my success as a practitioner, that I can do tummo. And tummo is not being affected by cold. To the degree that you are in the wintertime and there's snow and ice all around you, and you're basically, naked, just wearing a sheet for a loincloth or something, and you have another sheet as thin as a sheet for a shawl, and they take the shawl and they put the shawl in ice water and then put it around you, and you're to meditate and evaporate and dry that sheet through your tummo. That's the characteristic of it. But what is actually happening is within yourself, you're generating this heat and not paying any attention to that sheet, not paying any attention to that cold, not paying any attention to the water evaporating or anything like that. So that's an example of being able to get beyond the characteristics, being liberated from the characteristic of present awareness. So then the last one is the third avenue of liberation is not aspiring for a result. You have no expectation at all. This is the clear nature. This is the dharmata, the clear nature of equalness, seeing all things being equal. And that beyond anything to be attained or the act of attaining something, there is nothing at which to aspire. This is the third avenue of liberation, not aspiring for a result. So these are the things that lead us to this primordial knowing. These are the component parts of what that is. If we can say component part, this is the part of the yogi. This is what we are developing. This is what the Buddhas represent, what they symbolize. The bodhisattvas on the path are doing this in stages, and they are reaching levels of perfection of being able to stabilize this in their progression and so on. So we're just becoming aware of these things. We're just beginning to embark on this path, on this dharma, to be able to do this. So the first thing we got to do is have our target. We have to have our goals. We have to understand what it is that we're going for. Not just to say, I want to be enlightened, but also to say, what are the steps that I need to do to get to that enlightenment? Most people think, most people say, most people teach that meditation is very passive. You're just relaxing. You're just getting blissful. You try and stabilize that for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, or whatever it is. I'm so peaceful. I'm such a good meditator because I'm passive and I don't react to those things around me and so on. But meditation is actually a very active process. Very active process. The result of the liberation is something that gets us beyond all those attachments and all those, delusions and so on like that. But for us to get there, we have to go through all these machinations. We have to go through all these changes. We have to go through all this process. And this is where the work is. This is why great meditators would go off for 5 years into a retreat hut, or 5 or 10 years or 15 years or whatever it is, to be able to hone this, to be able to do this. So we'll talk more about this process, but now you're realizing, or you should be realizing, that there is this very definite process, and everything that we've been talking about these past few months is a stage in the development to get to higher stages of involvement to be able to do this. Okay. So if anybody has any questions or comments, we can talk. Okay. So when we give rise, now we're ready. Now we see, some of these processes, some of the elements here. Now we're ready to start focusing on the deity, what it is to be the deity, and the deity is symbolic. We say that we have these deities within us, and this is the actualization of our Buddha nature, and it actualizes in many different ways. So we say all these deities are within ourselves. So now we have to be able to recognize what all those different activities are. So those activities occur in a field, in a Buddha field. And the Buddha that is in there has these anthropomorphic representations of what it is to be doing these things. And these representations, these symbologies and so on, are figments of our imagination to help us to wrap our minds around what this is. So it's not like, we're praying to somebody outside beyond ourselves in the sky or down below or wherever. It's we're trying to purify ourselves to allow this actualization, this pure wisdom actualization to come up, is what we're trying to do. So we're praying sometimes, it's always to ourselves, to be able to part the confusion, to part the emotions and so on, to give ourselves strength to be able to do these things. So the first part of this is to recognize the Buddha field, the Buddha field. And this Buddha field is represented by what we call the mandala. The mandala, the mandala. And this is, you've seen these stacked figures. Actually, the bell is a mandala. And you see these mandalas, sometimes you see them drawn and they're flat. You've seen them as sand mandalas. And the bell is a three-dimensional mandala. The sand mandala is three-dimensional, although it's not very tall, but it's meant to where there's certain aspects, certain parts of it, where it's thicker than other parts. And it's showing levels of the mandala. And the mandala is really the palace, is the field of that Buddha. And in that field, in that palace, are all the associated deities, the yoginis and the dakinis and the dharma protectors and the gatekeepers and the bodhisattvas and so on like that, that are all part of that mandala, that are part of the palace of that particular deity, to be able to actualize that particular activity that deity is engaged in. So a large part of what we're doing is recognizing that environment, creating this space around ourselves, that this space around ourselves becomes the Buddha field. So last night we did Medicine Buddha. And one of the steps of doing Medicine Buddha was visualizing the other Buddhas, the other Medicine Buddhas that are part of that, and what that Buddha field is like. Now, it wasn't very detailed because that practice is a very concise practice for us Westerners. But as we get more involved, we get into more involved practices, deity yoga practices, sadhanas, that are much thicker, and they go into much more discussion, elaboration of what those mandalas are and so on. So we begin to recognize that slowly, 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 and we begin to see that, and we begin to take that with us. As we develop this, we take it with us when we get up off the cushion. We say we take the meditation, we take the Buddha field with us. And this is how we become transformative. This is where, people begin to recognize, oh, so-and-so, you really changed. I understand you've been doing Buddhist practice for some time, and now I can see that it's really changed because you're taking that Buddha field with you to whatever degree you can. It's certainly not 100%. It may not be 50%, but compared to some other people out there, it's going to be a whole lot different and very recognizable. So the second part then is after we establish the Buddha field, the mandala, then we start developing the awareness of the deity itself, the form of the deity, what the mental aspect of the deity is, what the speech of the deity is, and so on. So we begin to do that. So in the first part, it's the environment. The second part is the deity itself. So for this first stage, we're working on the environment. So we start with the elements of space and with the mind. So it says here, what is being purified is the formation of the world where sentient beings are born. So we're seeing this world as all a potential Buddha field. And we're trying to sustain that Buddha field. And we're recognizing that sentient beings are all in this Buddha field. The animals, the wild animals, are closer to being in that natural Buddha field than human beings are, because they accept it for what it is. We're the ones that's always trying to change it. We're the ones who are not happy with it. We're the ones who are miserable. We're the ones who are using it to get over on other human beings and so on. We're the ones who are manipulating all the time. So to be able to be in a place where we can sustain it as it is, that doesn't mean we got to go back to being, living in the forest like cavemen or something like that. But there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a sensibility. And that's what comes out of this, this transformation of recognizing that, what our balance is. So we start with the element of space and with the mind, and which is the principal cause for the formation of the world. The mind is the formation. We're the ones who are imputing all these appearances to be this, that, or the other thing. And it's all happening within this space. So now the specific karma of sentient beings, collective and similar in nature, are born. Forms, specific world systems that appear to the sentient beings who share similar karma and whose habitual imprints influence the mind and perceptions. So we can say that all of us together, we're born into the same family, living in 21st century America right now, regardless of where we were born, what nation we were born in the world, but we're all children of the world, no matter where we were born. We all have these same sensibilities about us. So we're all together in this. We're all brothers and sisters in this. And we have this similarity of recognizing these forms, these habitual imprints that brought us here. So it's quite likely that in the bardo, before we were born, we were all in this mass, or whatever you want to call it, that we all could recognize each other. Oh yeah, I'm going to see you one day. Although it's not that literal, but it's expressed sometimes that way. So this collective karma ripens as a collective environment shared by these sentient beings. So we are sharing this karma. We're sharing this craziness that we're going through these past number of years. This nationalism we're going through, this all upsetting nature that everybody, it doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on, everybody's going crazy. This side isn't happy and this side isn't happy. The one thing that we've all got in common is that we're all unhappy. And now we've got this coronavirus thing that we're going through. So that's layered on top. You think that would bring us together? It doesn't seem to be, not yet. You know, we might have had a week where it seemed to be, maybe it was, but then all of a sudden, you know, they found ways to cut right through and continue to divide people instead of let it galvanizing people. They continue to allow it to cut through people. So, but the reality is that we're all in this, we're all sharing the same karma. It's kind of like, you know, we talk about karma, you know, when people go, you know, are in an airplane and the airplane goes down and they're all killed. They say, oh, they all had that same karma for that to happen. And some people say, that's unimaginable. How could that happen? You know, these people were so good. That kid was a year old. This other kid was 5 years old. This guy was 95 years old. You know, this woman, you know, she's pregnant. You know, how could all these things happen? This guy was such a prince. He did wonderful things for us. How could they all have the same karma to be killed in this plane accident? Well, you don't know. You know, there's certain things that happen, you know, and that we are echoes of those things. We are reverberations of those things. We talk about it in the Bardo Todal. You know, these past number of weeks, we've been learning about the Bardo Todal. And we talk about, you know, these sounds and these lights and these rays and so on. They're all vibrations, aren't they? And we're all part of these vibrations. So the way in which they manifest is beyond our comprehension. It's beyond our ability to be able to understand, to fathom what it is. So this collective karma ripens as this collective environment. And this refers to the mandala of the 4 elements and Mount Meru. So this mandala, this whole body, if we can look at all this, you know, there's many different mandalas, you know, and you can say that the solar system has a mandala, the earth is a mandala, there's individual beings on the earth that have mandalas, the galaxy is a mandala, all this stuff is mandalas. You see all these component parts and how they fit together and so on. But the thing that we can recognize, the thing that we can divide things down to, if you remember in the very, very beginning of talking about in Buddhism 101, we talked about the 5 elements. We talked about the 5 poisons. The 5 elements. No matter where we are in all of nature, you know, there's space, there's water, there's earth or solid dirt, whatever you want to call it. There's fire, and there is air or wind of whatever type it might be. It might be ammonia. If you're up in Jupiter, the atmosphere is what? Methane ammonia or something like that. You know, so what those things chemically are may be different, but they're comprised of these basic elements of space. All this is within space. It's water, it's earth, it's fire, and it's fire and wind. There's 5 elements. And Mount Meru. Mount Meru is this transcendence that all this is surrounding, all this is going through. So like it's a way of explaining that there's like this truth that all this other stuff, all this phenomenal stuff is rotating around. So we begin to recognize that. You know, so these are things that the human mind can latch onto and can use to understand, you know, its relative nature, because we have to understand the relative nature before we can understand something that is beyond that, something that is absolute. We have to understand what we are so that we can liberate ourselves from it. So these 5 elements are purified into the Buddha fields where the Buddhas awaken. And these are the innately pure space of phenomena. This is called the Dharmadhatu. So there's the Dharmata, which is like all this space, and then here's all the sublimation of that comes into the Dharmadhatu. Dharmadhatu, dhatu means a realm. So Dharma is the field living, if you will. And so here is this. So we begin to see that. And then this has vibrations to it. Remember I said about the sounds, the lights, and the rays are collections, are coalescence of vibrations. So these vibrations then have the seed syllables. These are the seed syllables. You've heard this reference many times. You know, last night we did Medicine Buddha, and the seed syllable of Medicine Buddha is a dark blue hung syllable. That's a seed syllable. And then Manjushri, the seed syllable is a red orange mum syllable, and Ascobia is a hung syllable. Ratnasambhava is a tram syllable. So all these deities have these seed syllables that as we get into the deity yoga practices, you'll begin to become familiar with and understand. But here is the key to what they are representing, what this vibration represents. So the first one is an E, you know, so it's the sound, E, E, E. It's a primordial thing, isn't it? Primal, I should say. And then the next one is Yam, Y-A-M, Yam. Yam is water. Yam is water. E is space. Lam is is earth. So the space is blue, the water is white, the earth is yellow, the next one is Ram, is red, and that's fire. And then the next one is Sum, is green, and that is wind. So these 5 syllables now coming together have a color representation and have a parallel sound representation. So there's a sight, there's a sound, and there is a light. And the light is not the light that you see with your eyes. It's the light that you see with your heart. Because what we're developing is heart thoughts. Heart thoughts. We're going to stop thinking with our brain. Ultimately, is what we do is we're able to transcend our brain thoughts where the emotions are, where the confusions are, and we begin to have heart thoughts. This is the wisdom. So, and these thoughts come up in fields of these colors, you know, but they're not colors that we see. We're colors that we realize. We're colors that we experience, and we're making the associations of what they represent. That's what we're going to learn, what they represent. And vicariously, you know, we're going to see some of this, but the experience is that you do this in your meditation. Then, like I said before, nobody can ever take it away from you. You know what green is. You know what red is. You know what white is, what they represent. And then you can look at it in the macrocosm. You can look at it in the phenomenal world and say, oh yeah, there's a vibration there. There is a simile there. There is a familiarity with that now. And you can begin to understand the phenomenal world much better because now we're understanding, we're taking a look at it in its very formative stage. So here you should have the logic, here you should have the yogic confidence of the union of the basic ground and the result, remembering that the innately pure state of the 5 elements is. So what I'm saying here is now we're bringing the ground of where we are, and we're having these visions, we're having these intellectualizations, we're having this target setting of the goal, and we're creating a pathway between the two. We're scriptures. We're relying on the teachers. We're relying on the Buddha. We're relying on all those masters who have been there many times and back, and say, this is how I got there. This is what works. This is how we did it. Now it's up to you to decide whether you want it to work for you or not, and whether you're willing to make the commitments to the process to make it work. But here's a plan. Here's a system. So we're getting exposed to our recognition of that we're in this ground, on this ground, and that there is this target. And now we're beginning to say, well, here's the pathway. The pathway is the deity yoga. So as we go on that deity path, as we go on that path of enlightenment, what we are going to do is we're going to purify our confusions, our emotions, our habitual tendencies, and so on. And what we are going to have the result of is the wisdom of those 5 elements. And those wisdoms are characterized in the forms of the Buddhas, of the Buddha family, and the wisdoms that they represent. So for instance, and this is done in the female aspect. That's why we, when we see the deities, we see them many times in Yabyum together, with the male and the female. And what this represents is their union. And it's beyond the sexual union. It is a melding of that which is, the Yab and the Yung, the yin and the yang, the dualism, all the ever-present dualisms and phenomenal nature is all coming together into this bliss and emptiness. So the wisdom is held in the female, where she represents the embodiment of that wisdom. The male represents the actualization of that wisdom, the method, the compassion, the skillful means. And the female represents that innate wisdom. So an example of that is in the Buddha family, we say, which is the blue family in this particular case, is the space, is the element space, the color blue, the Buddha family, and the wisdom of all pervading wisdom. And this is embodied by the female Buddha, Datvishvari. Akasa Datvishvari is her name. So in the Bardo Todal, we've been exposed to this. We've been hearing about this. So this is what it represents at this very fundamental level. Then the next one is in the water element, is the white color, is the Vajra family, is Buddha Lakana. Buddha Lakana is her name. And she's the consort to Ascobia. And Akasa Datvishvari is the consort to Varanchana. Then the next one is the Ratna family. And this is the earth element. And this is the color yellow. And this is the wisdom of Mamaki, which is the wisdom of equanimity. And I forgot to mention that the wisdom of Buddha Lakana is the wisdom of mirror-like wisdom. The mirror-like wisdom. Remember I was saying about appearances? Well, this is now becoming stable in that, becoming the embodiment of that wisdom, that realization, understanding that mirror-like wisdom. So Mamaki now is the wisdom of equanimity. And then the next one is the Padma family, which is red, which is fire, the element fire. The Padma family, the lotus family, and this is the consort Pandaravasini, who is the consort to Amitabha, and she represents the wisdom of discriminating awareness. The wisdom of discriminating awareness. What it is I'm going to focus on. Sometimes you got to focus on the relative. But if you don't need to focus on the relative, automatically you need to fix, you need to focus on the absolute. Just be at peace. So it's that wisdom. And then the next one is the karma family, which is the green family, which represents the element wind, and is the female Buddha Samayatara, who is the consort to Amagog city, and she represents the all-accomplishing wisdom. All that needs to be done can be done. So now we're seeing how this relates into a psychology, into human beings, and so on. All this is here for the psychology, for human beings to be able to understand, well, how should I behave? How should I do things? So here is this system that is there to help us to guide ourselves, through these Buddha families, how to attain levels of perfection, how their sons and daughters, the bodhisattvas, the 8 great male bodhisattvas and the 8 great female bodhisattvas, that are showing us the levels of human perfection and how we move through that to become Buddha perfection. So you can see all these systems are all just interconnected with each other. And it's just simply amazing. There's physics in this. There's psychology in this. There's medicine in this. There's everything that we can imagine is in this. Does anybody need a break? Anybody have any comments or questions? Should I keep going? You want to stand up and stretch?
We can keep going,
Okay.
but that's just me. That's just me.
Adrian's speaking for the group. Okay.
Yeah.
I could use a 1 minute stretch.
Oh, you want to take a minute? Okay. Stand up and stretch, please. I will too. Is this being helpful? Is any of this making any sense to anybody?
Yeah, I got some new information tonight, Lance.
All right, good. All right, we're gonna.
Yes.
I'm stretching and twisting my body. Remember, the Buddha said you got to take care of your body, otherwise you won't have a good mind and you won't be able to meditate. So you got to take care of the body. In our tradition, it's fine if you got to move, you got to stretch, you got to get up. Some traditions teach, oh, you gotta meditate through the pain. Well, I'm being exposed to that a long time ago. I said, I got to do that. That doesn't sound right to me. And then I found Vajrayana, and they said, whatever you got to do, you do. Because if you're a really good practitioner, if you're a really good yogi or yogini, then that doesn't matter. You're gonna get rid of that discomfort, whatever it is, just by doing something that's common sense. Which made a lot of sense to me. I guess I'm common.
Hey, Lance.
Yes, sir.
Space, what color did that represent?
Clear.
Clear.
Well, actually, no. In that sense, no. I'm sorry. It was blue.
Blue.
Yeah. So it would actually, to get right down to it, they would all be clear. It would be clear blue. It would be clear white. It would be clear yellow, clear red, clear green. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. And in different practices, things have slightly different meanings to them. It depends what the context of the practice is.
Lance, I have a question.
Sure.
A little earlier in the discussion tonight, you pointed out a difference between us and the animals. So that's how I'll describe it now. Is that we're always wanting to change things,
Right.
instead of just being
Right.
where they are. If we never tried to change anything in the history of humanity, wouldn't we still be living like Neanderthal man?
Yeah, but where's the balance? That's what we're saying. Where's the balance? And isn't that interpretive? Right? So by what system do you judge the balance? So what we're positing is a system that helps you to find that judgment to be able to do that. Would you agree that we're out of balance?
Well, no, I would not agree that we're at a balance because of
We're in balance or out of balance?
out of balance.
You don't think we're out of balance?
No, I think we're out of balance.
Oh, okay. I just got to be clear because you slurred over that word. I got to make sure I got it.
Just trying to fool you.
Go ahead.
And we have not, I don't know if you can call it the optimum balance or where we should be, but with the storminess of the international personality now, with the way things are in the world, we could not possibly be in balance. If we called that balance, and balance is not a good thing. We're
Okay, so what's the point?
the point is, how do we know where the balance is? I mean, does everything just become suddenly serene and peaceful? And since everybody seems to feel all right, and no one is at war, and everybody's being generous with each other, is that how we judge it? By what criteria do we judge it? Some people think that a non-competitive environment, and even an environment that is not sometimes hostile, is not a good environment, because it does not. And I've heard people say this. I don't necessarily believe this, but they
Well,
think,
I don't know that I'm a good person to be able to answer the question. I mean, I certainly have my views on it, but that's what we're all striving to do, isn't it? And if we have loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity for each other, and we practice that, we practice the eightfold path of the Four Noble Truths, we'd be a lot closer to whatever that balance is than where we are now. Because in my view, we're not practicing that bodhicitta. We're not practicing that loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So, so for those of us who are spiritualists and who recognize this kind of thing, this is our quest. This is what we're trying to stabilize in our Buddha field around ourselves, in our community, in our families, and so on, and to be able to allow it to work for generations to come, and so on. So this is what we're trying to do. Other people are trying to split us apart.
Can I say something about that too?
Sure. Go ahead.
I think personally, I think that if you do the practices, you'll just know it. It's as simple as that. You don't need to ask yourself about anything else, because it's the experience that you will have within that moment, and you just know it.
Okay.
That's how I see it, and that's how I yeah.
Well, I agree. I understand, and because we seem to have had the same kind of experiences, So, but this is a topic for another discussion. So I don't know that we're going to resolve anything. So I want to get back to this teaching, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's a good topic, worth talking about, but not at this time. Okay. So we've been talking about the environment. We've been talking about the Buddha field. We've been talking about the mandala. So now we need to bring it in a little bit tighter and giving rise to this immeasurable deity palace. So here's where we purify the abodes where sentient beings live and stay, such as houses and so forth, and the conceptual grasping to these. So we're getting a little bit more tighter with this, articulation of maybe what Adrian is talking about and what Gary is talking about. So let's see how this develops. So here we purify the abodes of where sentient beings. So these are purified into the primordial wisdom of original basic space, the Dharmadhatu, free from all elaborations, which is taught to be the abode of the Buddhas. So here it's saying that, we got to get to this transcendent, non-conceptual place to be able to use that as our guide as to where it is that we need to be as ordinary human beings. And that when we come back to being a human being, an ordinary human being, that now we're striving more and more to be that non-conceptual self, if I can use that word self. So the operative word here is purified, that all this stuff is being purified in the primordial wisdom of original basic space. The space when the Big Bang first exploded, what was that? All of a sudden now it's all filled with all this stuff. So to go back to that in a metaphorical way. So the innate immeasurable deity palace, is thus the palace of the abiding nature just as it is. So if we just left things alone, it would have been fine. if we didn't have the Big Bang, or maybe the Big Bang was the inevitable explosion of such chaos that it had to explode out. Who knows? But it implies the notion that there was peace before that. Ever since then, it's been craziness. But there's something beyond that duality, is what is really being illustrated here, is what's trying to be conveyed here, is beyond that duality. This is the true Ankanista, the Dharmadhatu, of innately pure appearances, the pure essence of appearance, the pure essence of appearance. I used to have this thought, and this is my thought, so take it for a grain of salt. But I used to think about, Neanderthal man or whatever, human beings. And at what point did they began to use the tools that they had to be able to get over on other human beings for malicious reasons and so on? At what point did they do that? What was that turning point? How did that happen? In the Bible, they talk about Cain and Abel. Here's Cain, he kills his brother Abel. Cain killed Abel. So they talk about it right there, two brothers. Two brothers, same father, two different mothers. So, and that's part of the thing about this riddle that we have about what our life is, what samsara is we're not going to fix it. It doesn't get fixed. What we do is we liberate from it. We transcend from it. We're not going to fix it. So the first thing you got to do is save yourself, right? And then as soon as you get to some degree of stability, then you start saving those around you. You start doing what you can for those around you. But that may require you going back to doing some more work on yourself, because you're starting to slip back. You're starting to be pulled back into the quagmire. But then you go and you fix yourself again, and then you get a little stronger. You come back out, and now you can help more people and so on like that. And it's kind of like that. So this pure essence of appearance, of what this is, this pure essence of appearance, this pure mind that we have a pure mind, but we've contaminated, we've allowed it to be contaminated. So the next thing is, it says the agent of purification is taking onto the path the palace of innate pure appearance of the Buddha field. So the agent of purification is the path, the system. That's the agent of purification. Now you can question its validity. You can question, its truthfulness, however you want to define it. But it's up to you to want to do it. There's this pathway, and it's not the only pathway. There's other systems that are articulated in other traditions and so on, whether they're philosophic traditions or they're religious traditions, maybe they're political traditions or whatever, however you want to define it. But there's a system, and there's a system with us, in this Dharma tradition. There's a system here that is a path of purification. There's a no holds barred system. Everything is there to be considered. Everything's a possibility. We work through the doubts. We cut through the doubts bit by bit. We don't suppress them. We logically go through them. And to the point where sometimes you have to leave logic where it is, because things don't make sense sometimes. This world doesn't make sense sometimes. This, what we're going through now doesn't make sense. So there comes a point where you exhaust the rationality of it, and you just leave it and say, okay, I don't have to play that game. And you start looking for another way to live. So maybe that's what we're doing. So the agent of purification is taking onto the path the palace of innate pure appearance of the Buddha field. So the first thing that we need to do is to purify our awareness, our appearance of what this phenomenal nature is. And we have to stop looking at it as a malevolent, evil phenomena that is hell-bent on destroying us and others. We have to look at it in its dualistic way and say that there is many beautiful things, many very useful things, but they are just as temporary as this other stuff. But it's all part of the same nature. It's all part of this. And I'm going to bring it onto the path, and I'm going to neutralize both into peace. In the prayer that we read, it's in the Four Thoughts to Turn the Mind to the Dharma. When we talk about the suffering of human beings, we say the suffering of suffering. And we say that it doesn't matter how I got here. It doesn't matter why I got here. That doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm going to live now in a life of peace. What do I have to do to sustain peace for myself? So that makes a lot of sense. Everything else falls into place. And then what you find is you begin to, build a family. And maybe, it's a spiritual family. And things have improved. We can look at things, we can look through history and we can see all the terrible things that have happened. But we can also see that that despite the things that we're going through right now, that there were times that were really, really terrible, terrible, terrible times, worse than it is now. And things have improved. You know, slavery, if you were born into slavery, man, that's a living hell. If you're born into a war zone, that's a living hell. If you're born into a land that is famine stricken all the time, you know, that's a living hell. So we've improved a lot of things on this planet. So there has been progress. But don't expect that there's going to be total progress. So the agent of purification is the path, bringing this all into the path, putting it through the churning of the investigation, of the vipassana, of understanding the Dharma, and having it go through that churning, that process of tempering and so on. And then we get this neutrality, we get this peacefulness. So then we represent that by a seed syllable. Remember the seed syllables we talked about, E, Yam, Lam, Ram, Sum. But here's a seed syllable called Brum. That is actually pronounced drum by the Tibetans, which this drum is emitting a 5-colored light. So we're talked about, you know, here is this primal, you know, explosion, if you want to call it that. And then here comes this primal light that is issuing forth from this drum syllable. And these syllables then, because this light is made up of these syllables then, are then being deposited on this Mount Meru, you know, this center core of wisdom, of accomplishment, of Dharma Dhatu. And after emanating and reabsorbing light rays, the seed syllable Brahm transforms into the immeasurable deity palace, which arises from the cause of the 2 accumulations of merit and wisdom. So what this means is, if you remember when we do deity yoga practice, and maybe you haven't had the experience yet, but we're going to get to it real soon. You know, as soon as we finish this book, we're going to start doing deity yoga practice. So one of the things that we visualize is that this lotus flower comes up. And then sitting on this lotus flower is this seed syllable. And the seed syllable is emitting light that is going to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, which is representing wisdom and skillful means. And then that light then comes back from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, from that wisdom and skillful means, and comes back into the syllable. And now the syllable is within ourselves. So it started out in ourselves, it goes out in ourselves, it comes back. But now it's energized by the wisdom and the method, the skillful means of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then it goes right back out to all beings. It goes right back out to all beings. We're not holding it. It goes right back out again. So there's this emanating and reabsorbing light rays. The seed syllable drum transforms into the immeasurable deity palace, which arises from the cause of the accumulations of merit and wisdom. So we say that we're creating this merit, this Buddha field. So before it goes out to all beings, it's creating this Buddha field. You know, so when you're sitting in the shrine room at Dharma Surya or someplace like that, or maybe your home in your meditation room, and you're kind of like sanctifying this space that you're in. You're making this holy space for yourself is the first thing that you recognize before you recognize yourself, because you wouldn't want to do this in a very contaminated area. You would want to do this in a very sanctified environment. So the first thing that you sanctify is that. So you make your offerings. You have your water bowls. You light your candles. You burn the incense. You have the food offerings and so on. So you're sanctifying the area. All this ritual starts playing into this. It's all developing this mindfulness of this space that you're trying to create for yourself. So this light is part of that, and it's the accumulation of wisdom and merit. Wisdom and merit. So the merit comes from the action, comes from the activities. The merit comes from the merit does not come from wisdom by itself. Wisdom, merit comes from the actualization of wisdom. If you keep the wisdom to yourself, that's like what the gods do. That's the God realm. They keep it for themselves. They have no compassion for others. But those who take in wisdom, however meager it may be, they turn it around and they make it for the benefit of others. That's the enlightenment. That's the bodhisattva. That's the Buddha. That is the true Buddha who is engaged. So this immeasurable palace is the essence of the five wisdoms, which appears replete with perfect ornamentation, shape, and structure. The five wisdoms are a way to describe the mind of the Buddha. So this Buddha field becomes the mind of the Buddha. It's just the mind of the Buddha. It's just the space. It's just, what we call space. It's just the mind of the Buddha. And those five wisdoms that we talked about before are what is the activity of the Buddha that is within ourselves. It's all within ourselves. And we begin to recognize this a little bit at a time. These things come up a little bit at a time. Now, learning these things and studying these things, you begin to recognize these things. You begin to identify this. If all you do is listen to me talk about this for a couple of hours once a week or something like that, it's not going to stay with you. I got to tell you that the work that I've had to do and the work that so many others have had to do, and not that my work has been that great, because it certainly hasn't. There's many more things I need to do and learn and so on. But the only way I got here was by many, many, many hours, many, many days, many, many weeks, many, many months, many years that I've spent studying this stuff and practicing this stuff, investigating this stuff, and then transcending, allowing myself to exhaust this. This is the only way I know how to make it happen. This is what I'm trying to give you enthusiasm to be able to do. There's no rush. Take your time. Everybody's got their own time schedule. But you find that for everything that you achieve, there's a whole lot more below the surface that had to be exhausted to get to this point right here. And then from here, then you want to get to this infinitesimal point up here somewhere. So it's always this work, this is being a human being. This is being on the path. What better thing do you have to do in this lifetime? So you begin to recognize this as the five wisdoms of the Buddha. So we talked about the five wisdoms. I already mentioned that. So they're on page 6. So it's important so here is the purity. This is recalling the purity. It is important to have an understanding of the significance and symbolism of the pure attributes depicted in the celestial palace. This is known recalling the purity. So what that means is that you're building this mandala and you're doing it very actively and all the little contributory points of it. And so you're very aware of what the meaning of all them is. And you're recalling the purity of it. When you slip and fall, when you backslide, when you take a vacation and you stop studying for a few weeks and you come back, you got to recall the purity. You got to go back. You got to get back to that mindfulness. So we have to recall the purity. That's why the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva is so important. It's the confession. Hey, look, you know, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm asking you for help. You're inside of me. Please help me. I'm going to do everything I can to sustain it. Don't let me go. Keep me going. When I'm strong, that's great, you know, but when I weaken for whatever reason, be there for me again. So we have to build this mindfulness. So this next section says, however, beginners are not able to remember all these symbolic meanings during one meditation session. That is why, if you simply remember that, all the qualities of the immeasurable celestial palace of the deity arise as a specific representation of the myriad inconceivable enlightened qualities of purity and realization. Well, that's a mouthful. I'll say it again. All the qualities of the immeasurable celestial palace of the deity, the mandala we've been talking about, arise as specific representations of the myriad, many, many, many manifold, inconceivable enlightened qualities of purity and realization. So it comes from study, it comes from receiving teachings, it comes from practice, it comes from meditation, it comes from experience.
So, Lance.
Yes, sir.
So, what does exactly that mean for practice? That was, I think, you know, one of my questions that I was getting ready to ask. Basically, for beginners that don't recall the details,
Right.
Can you elaborate a little bit on
Well,
this?
that's what we've been building up on. You know, what we've been building is, you know, the stages of meditation. So we've got to go through these individual parts that we've talked about all these weeks and so on. And now we're getting to this part of the generation stage of the deity yoga. Now, we say beginners, but we're saying now this is beginners of those who are endeavoring to be real practitioners. This isn't beginners who come in off the street for the first time and hearing these things. Are we expecting they're going to understand any of this stuff? So it's relative to what you have accomplished already and so on. So you keep doing the other stuff, the fundamental stuff, until you're ready. And by that, I mean that your mind is open, that all of a sudden you have the epiphany to go and move to the next step. And then these teachings, then they start making more sense. But in the meantime, we still may be doing deity yoga, but now, you know, and you come back to this and you say, oh, here's how I need to be doing deity yoga. I've been doing deity yoga like this. Now I didn't understand all this inner stuff. I didn't understand what this really meant. So we're constantly going and we're reevaluating. That's why the circle, remember the spiral, I talked about the spiral going around, and we go around and around and around and around, and we're purifying all the time. So we're purifying our practice, we're purifying our knowledge, we're purifying the experiences that we have.
Lance, could I say something?
Sure.
You know, when you're doing practice, that the word itself explains a lot. It's practice. You do it over and over and over and over again. And the more you do it with an open heart, the more relationship you have. So the deity, it just gets juicier and juicier the more you're doing it. And all these things start making, it's not even sense. It's just, it's part of you because you're doing it all the time. It's becoming one with who you are. And that's comes with practice. It comes with having a relationship with it. You can't have a relationship with something that you're unfamiliar with.
Yes, thank you. So I don't know if that answers your question, Adrian. I mean, what Pema said is absolutely true, and I think what I said is true. It's constantly working with it, and what has been obtuse or what didn't make sense, one day finally makes sense. All of a sudden, it clears away.
I understand. To me, I guess sometimes, because like I like to do things the right way, the correct way, the way that they should be, and the practice should be done at the detail level where they're taught. But I feel like sometimes we are at a disadvantage because of our culture, right? We don't have all the I guess preparation and the teachings and the background of the Tibetans or the Lamas, and
That's right.
their access to this text and all of that. And I mean, sometimes it's like I do the practices, but later on I'm realizing that, hey, I've been doing the practice, but some details kind of like got left out, or some details I got it wrong. So to what level does it really matter, like, the details? Because they're pretty elaborate sometimes, and like, how much does this weigh in
Right.
for the practice?
Well, I think the answer to that is don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, it's
You know?
practice. It's just like every sport. You got to start at the bottom and work your way to whatever. No, it's definitely a process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this lifetime, it's going to be compromised in some way, but it is in every situation. I've been studying the Drikungpas. The Drikungpas are the throne holders of the Drikung Kagyu lineage, and I've been reading their biographies, and they go through the same. They've been for 1,000 years. They've been going through the same vicissitudes of politics and human nature and stuff as we do right now. Okay. And it makes me realize that, all this is relative. It's all phenomenal nature. And we all make the best out of whatever situation that we're handed. And we do the best we can. We find the best teachers we can, and if we can't get the ones that we like, well, we keep the ones we got until we get the ones we want. But remember, you are your own teacher. In the final analysis of it all, you are your own guru. All that wisdom is within you. What you're looking for is the key to open that up. So whether it's one guy giving it to you, or a woman over here giving it to you, or a kid over there giving it to you, or something you discover on your own, it's really that fundamental. It's that simple. And it's just a matter of getting rid of all the worries and all the obfuscations. I'm not pronouncing it. Obscurations, obfuscations, all the confusions that we make on things. Sorry if I fractured that word, but you understand my point?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense.
Keep it simple and just keep working, and then when we always used to say, when you're ready, the guru will appear. That teacher that you're looking for, when you're ready, that teacher will appear. And that I believe. And what I've always found, it's always within myself. But there's always been somebody to point it out to me.
Right. Yeah.
So keep asking the question and keep trying to find the answer to the question. So let me finish this bit here, because this is mindfulness. So we're talking about, these myriad inconceivable enlightened qualities of purity and realization. And the second part is that functions as a sort of a close cousin or approximation of the quality of recalling the purity. So what that's saying is, yes, we're looking at this purity. We want to be as pure as it is, but there is going to be an approximation. There's going to be a close cousin. And that's the best that we can get to for this space and time. And be thankful for that. And don't say, I missed the boat. I went through that, you know, thinking, oh, I missed the boat. You know, I missed the opportunity. That Lama, I didn't go see him or something like that. But I found that, you know, it's when my time is right, it'll be there. So to summarize this, as a sacred expression of the self-appearing pure celestial palace of Buddha, we meditate on the mandala of the deity. By bringing this on the path, we bring the pure lands of all the Buddhas along the path. And the way to do this is through the confidence of purity and perfection. The indivisibility of ground and result, which is bringing those two together. So the perfection is not doing every little thing right, having all the, you know, the bell on the right part of your table and the right bell and having the right kind of cloth that you're wearing and sitting in the right posture. It's not all that. It's what happens inside of here. That's what's happening. That's the perfection. All this other stuff, all this ritual stuff is just a way to help you to focus. Some people need real strict. They need it to be very, very rigid. Other people want it to be a little loosey-goosey. If you make it too strict, you're going to lose them. You know, so it works both ways. But the perfection we're talking about is the realization that you have in here, the experience that you have in here. So whatever it takes to get you there. So the indivisibility of the ground and the result. Remember, the ground, and we get to the result through the pathway. And when we get to the result, we find out that we had that result already in our midst in the ground. We just didn't recognize it. So now we recognize it. And that's why we say the ground and the result are the same. The indivisibility of the ground and the result. So we're going to have to leave it here for tonight. So is this good stuff?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
A yes from Georgia too.
Okay.
Right. Yes, from Alabama as well.
All right. Well, we got the South covered. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lance.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope I don't get too fire and brimstone.
Oh no, I know fire and brimstone where I grew up. No, we don't. No.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, well then we're going to continue with this, and you can read ahead if you got this paper. You can read ahead. There's another paper. There's part 2 to this that is still within this chapter. So I'll send that outline to you so you have it for next week. But I just think we got to stay with this until we finish this book. We're going to finish this generation stage. And then after that comes the completion stage, however long that takes. But you guys are so devoted to this. And I know it's so important and it's going to make so much sense when we get to the deity yoga part that you'll be so happy that we've done this. And it helps me, you know, to tweak a few things on my side too. So, you know, we're always going through and you know, reaffirming things and remembering things that we might have forgotten and learn some new things along the way. Okay. If there's no other questions, then let's do our dedication prayers. Paul, I want to ask you, are you enjoying this?
I had to figure out where the unmute button was. Yep, good stuff. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we're on page 18. This is the lineage dedication prayer. And Paul, if you need a copy of this book, we can download it. You know, rather you can download it. It's on our website. That's available a couple different places, or I can send you the PDF for it. You can print it or whatever.
It's in the chat.
Oh, okay, thank you. I couldn't find it, which is
Yeah.
probably more
Michael,
a
do you have
statement
something
about
you
me.
can?
Yeah, Paul, the Word document is in the chat right now. If you scroll up to everyone chat, there's a Dropbox link for that.
Do you see the chat, Paul?
I do, but all I see is, does anyone need, oh, so yes, I do
Further.
need, I don't see the link. I guess
Up
that's not
further.
there yet.
Keep on going.
I scrolled. Maybe it's because I didn't have it open when you did it. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's there.
Does anyone need this document? Yeah, I don't see it either now you mention it.
Lance,
Oh,
are
I
we
thought
on
it was just
edition
me.
3?
Oh, hang on a
Hey,
second.
pardon?
Are we on edition 3 of the prayer book?
Edition 3? No, second. I think second edition.
There we go.
There you go.
I have edition 3.
You do?
Yeah, it's edition 3.
Man, aren't you lucky? I guess I got no one. Okay, good. There's probably only minor cosmetic differences between them.
Thank you.
Got it? Okay.
Okay. Well, we got the books at the
Thanks.
center, so if we ever get down to the center, we'll be able to get that book. All right, so we're going to do lineage dedication prayer. So if you got the book, please follow us. And if not, please just meditate and listen and try and meld yourself with the vibration. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dormalorgampopa, Pagmadrupa, and Lordri Kumpa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kaju Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. Next page. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Sri Kumbha Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings, in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mothers sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings with my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hom. Om, Ah, Hom. Om, Ah, Hom. May the body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas be inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of my body, speech, and mind. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. All right, so tomorrow I hope to see y'all at the Bardo Todal. And then there's an empowerment tomorrow evening that Gajah Rinpoche is doing for Avalokiteshvara Shenreze. So if you've got time for that, that would be a wonderful attainment to take part of.
Yeah, it's the 1,000-arm Chinrasic, which
Yes.
if you ever want to do Nyung Ye, you need the empowerment for that.
Yes.
What time
So
is that for?
that'll be really good to get it from Gajah Rinpoche.
Yes, definitely. Do you know the time for that?
You know, I don't. I
Okay.
think it's, for us, it's maybe around 5 o'clock or something, I think, late afternoon. I'm not sure.
Well, it's after Kimpo's teaching then.
Yeah,
Actually, he's having that instead for the afternoon teaching.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think maybe it's 3 o'clock then. I haven't looked at it. I've just been so busy. I haven't had time to look at it to see what time.
Something like that.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll figure it out. Yeah.
But we'll be talking about it tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, that's
Garchin, the site has the link under events.
Yeah.
okay.
What do we have to do? Do we have to go there and get the credentials to get online?
No,
Oh.
I think it's a YouTube presentation, YouTube streamed on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, so it's live streaming.
right, exactly.
Oh, okay. All right, well,
But the link is on the event schedule on Garchin Buddhist Institute site.
all right. Well, thank you very much. I'll check that out then.
Michael, do you have the link to the whole book?
You
If you
don't
don't,
have,
it's all right.
you don't have 24 pages?
No, I have your chapter 7. No, I don't have any of the rest. I just found out about it.
Oh, do you mean about stages of meditation?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just sent you the prayer book that we're using, not a chapter of the stages of meditation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.
All right. Cheerio.
Good night, Lance.
All right. Good night. Good night, Curtis.
I had my friends with me, by the way.
Oh, good. Okay. I hope they enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it?
Indeed, indeed.
Good. You getting that